Good morning. Good to see you all. The House Transportation Committee for February 18th, 2025 is now in session. Members, would you please make sure that you're signed in on your keypad so that we can take the roll? And while you're doing that, let me welcome all of you to Transportation Committee. Very pleased to see my road superintendent, Roy Thomason from Polk County. Good to have you with us today, and all of you. Madam Clerk, would you take the roll, please? We got 12. 13, 14. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Chairman, you have 16 members present.
Thank you. Any personal orders from committee? Chairman Hawk, Vice Chairman Hawk, your record.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to your county road superintendent, I've got Kevin Swatzel here from Greene County. Kevin, if you could wave hi. And we've probably got several road superintendents from other counties too. Why don't all of us stand, all of our county road folks to stand, and we'll give you the data. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you, Chairman Hawk. Thank you very much. We are glad to have you here. We appreciate what you do. I often comment to people in my circle of friends here on the Hill that the county road departments actually maintain and take care of about 60 to 70% of the roads in the state of Tennessee. So you're our partners, you're a very important partner, and we appreciate you being here today. We do have a calendar. I'm sorry, Representative Vice Chairman Butler, I didn't see your name.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to recognize what you kind of beat me already to it. Morgan County Road Superintendent Joe Miller is with us today, and just wanted to recognize him and appreciate him for being here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to recognize my road superintendent, Billy Pickle.
Thank you. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that. I just wanted to recognize our Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority, Patrick Wilson. He's the president. I just met with him earlier. I think he was going to be in our committee meeting today, but I just wanted to say thank you so much. I always enjoy flying out of Knoxville. He makes it a wonderful airport to do so, in and out, and I'm very grateful that he came here to visit us today. Thank you.
Thank you. That clears our list. We will be hearing from aeronautics a little later in this hearing room after we hear from safety. But right now we have to give attention to our calendar. We have 4 items on the calendar. We'll go right to it. House Bill 121, item number 1 on your calendar by Representative Darby. We have a motion. We have a second. You're recognized, Representative.
Didn't see the button. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. Well, thank you for allowing me to be here. It's an honor to be on this side of the aisle of y'all. Last year is one of the better committees that I was on.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We try to make it fun.
Yeah, yes, sir. House Bill 121 is an admin bill to clean up language from 1969. Currently, there are 3 special police commissions recognized in TCA. 2 of the 3 designate the Commissioner of Safety as the commissioning authority, but the 3rd, Railroad Police, designates the governor. The code designating the governor was written in 1969 and is outdated. This proposed legislation would designate the commissioner of the Department of Safety as the commissioning authority for the Railroad Police instead of the governor. Because the governor is the commissioning authority by the statute, a commissioning card is hand carried to the governor's office for signature. Aligning all special commissions will allow a much more streamlined process with better accountability and tracking with no redundancy. And Mr. Chairman, I stand for questions.
Okay, members, you've heard the explanation. Any questions for the sponsor? Question has been called on the bill without objection. We're voting on House Bill 121. Please cast your vote. Madam Clerk, would you open the voting board? Please take the vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, you have 18 ayes, 1 nay, 0 present not voting.
Bill passes, and your bill will go to Calendar and Rules. Representative Darby, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee.
Moving on to item number 2, House Bill 300 by Representative Martin. Representative Martin, you're here, and you are recognized. In a second, please explain your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last year, the General Assembly passed House Bill 2145, which came to me from law enforcement and a city judge in my district. And the bill did two things. First, it made the manufacturing and the distribution of license plate flippers device a Class A misdemeanor. And second, it made the purchasing or possession of these devices a Class B misdemeanor. If the device can be removed quickly and safely, then law enforcement may collect the device and process it as contraband. And I've since received feedback from the Hamilton County Sheriff and others that the legislation could be strengthened to ensure law enforcement's discretion and safety. So House Bill 300 does this by authorizing law enforcement to impound a vehicle fastened with a license plate flipper if the device cannot be quickly and safely removed by the owner or operator of the vehicle. And additionally, it requires reasonable costs associated with impoundment to be paid by the offender. The Department of Safety brought me additional mandatory language, and this clarifies that if a driver wishes to remove the device, then an officer has the discretion to direct the driver to relocate the vehicle to a safer location if needed. Thank you.
Representative, you do have an amendment. What is your amendment code on that?
3424.
That's what I have. I need a motion, a second on the amendment. We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adding the amendment to the bill, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. The amendment is on the bill. Any further questions for the sponsor? Question has been called. Without objection, we're voting on House Bill 300. Madam Clerk, please open the voting board. Please cast your votes. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
19 ayes, 1 nay, 0 present not voting.
Bill passes. Your bill goes to Calendar and Rules. Thank you,
Thank you.
Representative. We have one more item on the calendar, item number 3 by Representative Raper, House Bill 60. We have a motion on your bill, and I believe you also have an amendment. Is that right, Representative?
Yes, sir. 3412, I believe.
We have a motion to second on the amendment. All in favor of adding the amendment to the bill, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. Amendment is on the bill. Please explain your bill as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, committee. Hope everyone has heat this time of year. So this bill is in regards to family restroom signage. Last year, a mother who is my constituent brought me an issue, and she currently has a special needs child. She said special needs children and adults need use of family restrooms at rest stops and welcome centers, but they are incredibly difficult to find. Going to an exit and going to fast food or convenience stores is not really a viable option. Most of these places do not have family restrooms. Currently, we have 19 rest stops and 16 welcome centers. Of those, 5 rest stops and 9 welcome centers have restrooms, family restrooms. 14 total family restrooms. While this may not be many, we are starting with the smaller issue of helping out with signage and help identifying those centers. Whereas I'm going to be coming back soon with a bill to add more family restrooms, but that's for another day. Currently, there's no way of knowing the family restrooms or where they're located. These families with disabled and special needs members of their family before going inside the facility and identifying. While this bill does not add more family restrooms, it does help these families find restrooms they can use more easily. There's a one-time physical note of $30,700. Remember, family restrooms are a matter of convenience and safety. And the families and I would appreciate a favorable vote. I'm open to questions.
You've all heard the explanation. Any previous question has been called and seconded. Without objection, we're voting on House Bill 60. Madam Clerk, please open the voting board. Madam Clerk, please take the vote.
Mr. Chairman, you have 21 ayes, 0 nays, 0 present not voting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. House bill passes and goes to government operations.
Thank you, Mr.
Representative.
Chair and committee.
Thank you. Members, that completes our calendar. We will now go out of session and move into a hearing with Department of Safety. If the Department of Safety and their representatives would come forward, I see Chief Counsel Elizabeth Stroker, and I'll let you introduce the rest of your staff. There I see Colonel Perry. Good to have you with us, Colonel. Thank you very much. And members, the department is here to talk about a couple of things. I think one of you will be interested in is voter ID, which you'll be interested to learn about some of that stuff, as well as consolidation of some laws and rules that we have concerning what do they call them? Vehicles, ATVs. I couldn't think of the acronym, ATVs and UTVs. So good to have you with us. You're recognized.
Elizabeth Stroker, Legislative Director for the Department of Safety, and I have Colonel Matt Perry, who's over the Tennessee Highway Patrol, and then Russell Shoup, who is one of our assistant commissioners within the department as well. Wanted to go ahead and start off with the ATV discussion, since I think it'll be a more quick conversation and lead to less questions. So as a lot of people in this committee know, there have been bills every year that request to operate these off-highway vehicles on roads a mile or two here, a mile or two there. And the committee requested us last year to come back with them this year for a cleanup to make all of the roads and vehicles consistent throughout the entire state. And that's what you'll see with House Bill 810. That'll be before you next week. Chairman Grills has that bill for us. And what the bill does, it creates what is called a utility terrain vehicle, which will encapsulate your four-wheelers, side-by-sides, off-highway vehicles, all of those things that you consider an ATV or off-highway vehicle to be the exact same thing. And it will then allow for those vehicles to be operated on county roads, state roads that do not have a posted speed limit in excess of 45 miles per hour. So those vehicles will be allowed on all of these roads as long as the speed limit of the road is not over 45, which will get rid of your bigger highways that have more traffic, and dictate that these vehicles cannot drive more than 35 miles per hour on those roads. So that's the biggest piece of the bill, is it puts that consistency statewide. So we don't have to do these 1 mile, 2 mile here, offshoots every year. So that will just be the standard statewide. It does not get rid of any of the current roads that are in place that are allowed. This bill will cover all of those, but we want to make sure that those are also still included so we don't mess anything up. So all of those will still be there. It'll still have the requirement that you have to wear a helmet unless that type of vehicle is exempt from it. You've got to be 16. You can't have a permit. You've got to have car insurance, and you have to have it registered. All current things in law we're keeping in there. There are still the exceptions in place. There are some exceptions for, I believe, park vehicles and farming vehicles. We're not messing with any of that. The penalty is still going to be the same as it is now, which is a Class C misdemeanor with a fine only of $50. And then we're also keeping in place the requirement that if your vehicle comes with, lights, headlights, taillights, blinkers, windshields, all that those be used if your vehicle comes with it or if you have put them onto the vehicle. We are not going to be expanding any other restrictions. We are not putting any other requirements on it. So everything is staying as is, but we are expanding where these vehicles can go so it is consistent statewide.
Members, you've heard the explanation about the ATVs and UTVs. Any questions for safety on that regard? Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Safety, for being here. Will there be any restrictions on using it at nighttime, or it's still fine to use those at night as well?
You're regular.
I'm so glad you asked that. That was part of my talking points. So currently these vehicles, it's 30 minutes before dawn and 30 minutes prior to dusk. And so those restrictions will still be in place, that you don't need to be operating these vehicles at nighttime, especially because a lot of them may not have lights on them.
Any other questions? And the reason for this hearing is because of the bill that I hope you familiarize yourself with the bill that'll be in sub. I'm sorry, Chairman Hawk, is it next week?
It'll be enrolled this week till
Next week. So familiarize yourself with that. And the reason for this is because we've had a patchwork of laws governing ATVs, UTVs since I've been chairman. And it's just almost gotten to the point of being unwieldy. So we needed to consolidate. And that's what this bill will do. Chairman Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Does the owners have to have insurance on these vehicles?
You're recognized.
There we go. New mic system. We'll all get there. Yes. So anyone operating the vehicles, they'll need to have insurance on them. Yes, sir.
Any other questions on this particular topic from the committee? Seeing none, I think several of us interested in knowing what your plans are with the Real ID. So let's move into that subject.
I'll turn it over to Assistant Commissioner Russell Shoup. He's going to go through just a 2 PowerPoint slide because we know the bulk of what y'all want are questions. So I'm going to let him run through that here in a second. I do want to make it known that we will be hosting a Real ID event for members and their staff at the end of March. I believe it'll be the 25th and 26th. And so if you want to sign up for that, get your documents uploaded ahead of time, we can get your Real IDs issued. Or if you want to get with me, we can make appointments for that. So just wanted to let everyone know that that's going to be happening the 25th and 26th of March. So
Very good. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. So the Real ID Act of 2005 is going into effect officially May 7th, 2025. This act requires anyone who is 18 years old or older to have a Real ID or another federally issued photo identification if you're going to board a commercial flight in the United States, or if you're going to enter certain federal buildings, military bases, or nuclear power plants. To help address the volume that we're going to be seeing, and we've opened up over 1,400 additional Real ID appointments across the state in our driver service centers. And then the next slide. Sorry, thanks. So the department began issuing Real IDs in July of 2019. As of today, we have about 2.7 million Tennesseans that have chosen to get their Real ID. We have 1.9 million that decided on their last renewal not to get a Real ID for various reasons. And then we still have about 1.2 million that still need to make a decision based on when their renewal cycle ends. And then as far as when you apply for a Real ID, the items you'll need to bring with you is proof of U.S. citizenship or a lawful legal presence. You'll also have to prove that your Social Security number, and then provide 2 documents supporting that you are a Tennessee resident. Additionally, if you've had a name change, if you've been married or divorced, you'll need to bring in documentation to support that name change so that you can show the examiners that you've gone from your birth certificate to the name that you're currently using. And that's all I've got.
Yes.
just a few other things we always want to touch on. Real ID is 100% optional. We've kind of stressed that for the past 5 years. If you can use a Real ID, or you can use a document issued by the federal government that is just as sufficient. So a passport card, something of that nature. So if you're someone, you're like, I don't want a Real ID, you'll be able to fly if you have a passport or a passport card. We always want to make that very clear because there are some individuals who do not wish to have the real ID, which is definitely their choice. And I think at this point, I know we've kind of talked about real ID for 5 years, so we'll open it up to the questions that you all have, and hopefully we can answer those for you.
Okay, we do have some questions from the committee members. Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you all for the presentation. Now, Tennessee held out on Real ID for how many years? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years?
So we implemented Real ID, correct me if I'm wrong, Russell, 2019 or 18?
2019.
2019.
July, we implemented it.
As I understand it.
That is correct, yes.
Why is there so much beef about Real ID, and what is the purpose of Real ID? What do we net, the country nets by getting a Real ID? You have an ID that Tennessee has issued. That's the Real ID. But what are we netting?
Chairman, are you comfortable if we answer? Do you want me to wait till you recognize me?
You're good.
So Real ID came about after 9/11. This was implemented to make sure that people who are going to be boarding commercial aircrafts or going into federal buildings or facilities, that they are who they say they are. And so this was initiated, I think they passed it in 2005 is when the federal government passed Real ID. And it has just taken this long for the majority of the states to actually be able to create it and implement it. And so the benefit of the Real ID is it is extra security for those federal reasons that you may be entering a place. So the feds have said, hey, we want to make sure that this is Joe Towns whenever they get on our plane or they come into our courthouse. And we are not going to accept you coming into this building or on this plane unless you show us an ID that we have said meets all of the requirements to be able to come into this facility. So that is the benefit of it, is that the feds are saying you have to have this specific ID to enter onto our airplanes or into our buildings. And if you do not have that, you will not be able to be admitted.
So it just clicked. So in other words, I just thought about it. It's centralizing the ID of the country for people that want to fly or want to enter into these buildings that you name. It won't be state issued. It'll be federally issued.
No, sir. So it is state
Okay.
issued. Each state issues their own IDs. And each state, what it is if you want to be able to issue Real IDs, you have to meet a laundry list of security requirements and document requirements to be able to do so. There are some states that mandate Real ID.
Right.
There are some states like ours where it is optional. And so it is not a universal federal ID. It is a state ID, but it meets the requirements of the federal requirements to be able to go into these facilities or board these aircrafts.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned the requirements for the IDs. In my first term, I actually had a constituent who had an issue because she was married, had gotten a divorce. She did not change her name back to her maiden name, ended up getting remarried, and then divorced again, and then wanted to go back to her maiden name at that point. And there was a lot of confusion on how to get back to that point. So are you able to streamline that process for married women who changed their names along the way to get that Real ID?
Yes, sir. So as you just mentioned, there are people out there who get married, divorced multiple times, and they may not keep up with all of those documentation. And so we do have a process within our kind of specialized handling unit for those individuals who either can't find those documents or need help sifting through those documents, for lack of a better word. And that unit works with them. And we've got some forms that can be attested to and signed so that we can get them the license with the correct name on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I actually just have a compliment to pass on to the department. A few years ago, when I went to get my real ID, I looked up online, saw the requirements, took that to my local DMV in Trenton, and they said, this isn't good enough. You've got to have some other things because you have a commercial driver's license. Well, that's not what was online. I made one phone call, and I think if it wasn't that day, it was the next day. They had the website updated, so all those documents were available, those instructions. So I really appreciated y'all putting the attention to that and getting that straight. Thank you.
Elizabeth?
Yes, sir. Thank you for mentioning that, Chairman. There are different documents that are required for commercial driver's licenses, which I know is a big topic in this committee. We have all of that online for what's required for a regular license and then the CDL requirements, and it's two separate processes. And thank you, Chairman, for bringing that to our attention. We were able to get that fixed so we didn't prevent any confusion.
Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Department of Safety, appreciate the presentation. Actually, I really do appreciate the ATV update. I think that will help clarify challenges we've had lots of places with these vehicles on the road, but also help safety dramatically. Second, currently in Tennessee, how many individuals have driver's licenses? Rough number?
Approximately 5.8 million.
5.8 million?
Yes, sir.
How many currently real IDs have been issued since 2017, 2018, 2019, since we went
So
online?
of those 5.8 million, 2.9, roughly 47% have a real ID.
Is there a goal that the federal government is trying to pursue? Obviously, they'd like 100%, but is there some targets? Because they have postponed this date for convenience over the years. I don't think they'll probably postpone it again. But are there some targets the federal government has and some targets we have, or it's just convenience? If you don't have one, you can't fly.
You're recognized.
There's not necessarily a set target or goal. I think our goal as a state was anyone who wants one, we're hoping will get one before they either fly or before the deadline. To my knowledge, there's also no federal, hey, we want you to be one. I'm sure they would love it to be 100% just so they don't have people that come to an airport and then cannot get on their flight.
Sure.
But we've been encouraging for 6 years now for everyone to get it, or at least make sure they have a passport. And so halfway, we didn't even think we would get that many people at this point, but hopefully as everyone renews their licenses and before they travel, we can get more people to make sure they get this document, or if they don't want it, at least know that they've got to have a passport or something similar.
Thank you. I was just needing some clarification. Obviously, I'm one who didn't get it the first time around and then needed a postponement, but have gotten it now. It's pretty convenient to do through the Department of Safety, and so I encourage it, and it makes it a lot easier when you travel. Thank you.
You're recognized.
And on that note, thank you, Chairman, for bringing that up. We have a full, amazing online system for everything driver's license now that we've really bamped up. So you can make appointments. You can get in line early by checking in on your phone. If you make an appointment, I know some of you can attest for you and your children, you get in and out very quickly. And so we encourage people, make an appointment or try to check in online so you're not waiting for hours. We've really found that our wait times are very, very down, but also it lessens the amount of stress when someone goes if they can make an appointment ahead. And you can also upload all of your documents prior to visiting to get your real ID so that our department can pre-vet them to make sure that it's the proper documents so that when you come in, you know that you're not going to have to come back with another document. So we encourage people to do that as well.
Chairman Hawk.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you and your team for coming in. I do want to talk about the Real ID and the fact that we began issuing these in 2019 and not going into effect until 2025. Really, we're probably the same as most states in terms of the timing of getting that done. It's, passing the law in 2005 and now 2025, 20 years. That sounds about right for government to get something 20 years. Federal government. Exactly. Federal government, 20 years to do something there. I'm one of those that has not gotten my Real ID yet. And I think I'd like to participate in the event that you're going to have here. I might be the poster child for that. Tell me going forward, although the effective date Let me get that reiteration again. As of May 7, 2025, you will need either a real ID and or a passport to fly and enter federal buildings. Is that accurate?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And say if you've got somebody who's like me, who's a cheapskate and doesn't want to get a new driver's license. I pulled mine out here. It's coming due in about a year and a half, and I want to wait until I have to renew my license and get a real ID at that time. Going forward, we'll still be able to do this in the future. You can create a real ID at times in the future.
Absolutely. So it's totally at your call when you want to, if you want to wait until it's time for your renewal and then upgrade and get your real ID at that point, knowing, you may need to use your passport to fly. That's totally at your discretion. You could be someone who never wants to get a real ID, but we will be offering both options. I guess forever, unless something were to change.
Go ahead.
And thank you, Chairman, and thank you. And we like permissive bills. We like the permissive nature of that in Tennessee. So thank you all very much, and thank you for working on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Speaker Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to ask a couple questions. My first one is, why do some of our citizens not want to get a real ID? What are their reasons?
You're recognized.
I'm going to go off what I have anecdotally heard because I don't want to give my own opinion. I think some people just kind of as Representative Towns, we corrected something he said. A lot of people may think that it's the federal government tracking you or a federally issued license, which neither of those things are accurate. I think there's just some people who don't like the idea of an ID that has been approved by the federal government, and that's their prerogative. So if they would prefer to either use a passport or, not fly commercially, then we want to make sure that they have that choice.
Follow up?
The second part is, do you all have a plan for sometime in May to do a lot of PR on this? Because when people start going to the airport and to fly somewhere and they don't have this or don't have a passport, they're going to be in for a huge shock. They're going to have to go back home. And I think that needs to be publicized a lot.
You recognized?
Yes, sir. We have an awareness campaign. We've been currently doing interviews with media outlets. We're also posting it on our website, and we'll continue to do that and press hard. And know that just with the due date of May 7th coming, it also takes time to when you get your real ID for it to be printed and sent to you. So you need to allow some buffer there for when the next time you're going to travel commercially.
Thank you.
Representative Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So kind of really to follow up on that awareness campaign, is there a graphic that you would like for us to share or links or just to make sure, because just like Speaker Marsh brought up, you're going to have people that are going to try to show up to federal court, and that's a concern. So are we really, ensuring that people understand, especially those that are defendants, that maybe not be able to attend their court date?
You recognize.
Yes, ma'am. And I'm really glad that you asked that question. So wanted to circle back on one thing Russell said as well. When you're going in and booking flights and whatnot, I think they all have banners now that say you've got to have a real ID by May 7th. So hopefully the airports keep pushing that out before May 7th as well. But yes, ma'am, my plan was to send our real ID requirements, and we have a specific website dedicated to real ID, and a link for our appointment system was to send to all of you here after this committee. And really, I may just send it to the entire General Assembly and have y'all just push those out I know you sometimes do weekly, monthly newsletters. If you want to host town halls, we're happy to come to those and speak as well. Anything that you all can do to help, I'm going to send all that information to you all today to make sure that we get that out. And I'll make sure I set reminders for at least once a month to ping y'all to, hey, you may want to send this out again. Yes, ma'am.
Representative Renault.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to just bring up a couple of of reasons, because people have asked why someone might be hesitant to the Real ID. I think when we have the federal government potentially being able to expand the ways that people would have to use the Real ID is where it becomes a concern. Maybe in the future, you have to have a Real ID to get a prescription or to purchase a weapon. And so I think that is probably a lot of hesitancy for folks who might object to the federal government having the option to expand the reasons why you might have to have a Real ID. But on that note, I did have a question. My driver's license is expiring very shortly here soon in April. So I was looking at the tn.gov website, and I noticed something of particular interest for people who did not qualify for a regular driver's license. And it says that anyone whose license is currently suspended or revoked in Tennessee or any other state, anyone the commissioner has reason to believe would be unable to operate a motor vehicle safely because of mental or physical disabilities, anyone who has proven to be a habitual drunkard or who is addicted to the use of narcotics, anyone required to show proof of financial responsibility and has not yet done so, anyone under the age of 18 who has dropped out of school before graduating or who does not make satisfactory progress in school, and of course, anyone who's not a U.S. citizen. So are those folks, aside from the person who's not a U.S. citizen, those are the only way ID you can get then is the Real ID? Is that?
No, ma'am. So, and I'm glad you brought that up. That is our general, the general state law of who is not eligible for an ID at all. So yeah, so those are individuals suspended, revoked in other states, someone who is not attending school and under 18. So what you're referencing, they would not be able to get any type of license. And I'm glad you pointed that out. A Real ID, no one can get a Real ID unless they would otherwise be eligible for a regular Tennessee license. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back again. And thank you for all those explanations. If you're out of the country and the time has transpired and you don't have a Real ID, are you able to fly back into the country?
You recognize.
This actually gets asked a lot, and I'm really glad you asked that. So Real ID is only required for commercial flights within the country. If you're going outside of the country, you've got to have a passport or a passport card. So it wouldn't apply for international travel. Please do not think that your Real ID is sufficient for you to travel internationally. You still need to have a passport and whatnot for that. This is only for in-country flights.
Okay. And I heard someone talking about a defendant. And if you don't have, I'm sure there are going to be some exceptions, but this has not been disclosed. If you don't have a Real ID and you're a defendant, how do you get into the courthouse? Federal courthouse.
That may be a better answered by either our federal partners or those individuals who prosecute in those federal courthouses. The requirement is that you've got to have an ID, and it's got to be a Real ID. I may have to do a little bit of research, but I'm sure there have to be situations where a defendant is coming and maybe they don't have their ID on them or something. But I'd let me do a little bit of checking on that and see what that situation may look like.
Well, I venture to say that they're going to swiftly make accommodations for you without that ID. But when you find some official, please let me know. Now, the other thing is this, if you don't mind. You did say you're going to be doing a little training that will help us expedite. When is that again? In other words, members can go to something you all are going to perform it. And how long does it take us to do it? Will we be able to get it that day within that week if we come to that training, or what?
Yes, sir. So it's going to be all day, March 25th and 26th, and it's going to be up on the 8th floor in a conference room. You will need to upload your documents prior so that we can vet them, make sure that we're not wasting any time. And then there's going to be the information is going to be coming from the Senate research analyst, Debbie, over there. She's going to be sending it out to all members and staff, and you'll pick an appointment time so that we don't have any waits, or so that you can be there when you want to be there. And you'll come in, we'll look at your documents, we'll make sure that they all work, and then we will issue you your Real ID at that time. It generally takes less than 15 minutes to do so.
Thank you for that. And finally, I'm going to suggest that we do more PSA announcements on TV and radio and so forth that reach the masses, as our colleagues are talking about. We really need to get it out there so there won't be any confusion when people are trying to go transact business or get to another part of the country where someone may be going to a funeral or attending some graduation. PSAs, they should be free for us. Radios, TVs, PSAs, now in addition to all the other stuff you say, because it's going to become real critical the closer we get to that deadline. And thank you again for the presentation.
Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me one more question. This question is for our deputy. I just hate to see him sitting there and not answer any questions, so I want to make sure I give him one. When you all are stopping folks on the road, are you encouraging them to get the real ID at that time, especially those folks coming out of Memphis running 100 mile an hour up the highway? Are you encouraging them to get an ID at that point?
You're recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. Colonel Matt Perry, Tennessee Highway Patrol. I'm going to go with the answer is probably no. We are not pushing anything out. There might be troopers that are encouraging anecdotally, but we are not driving that message. But it's probably a fair point, something you just brought up. Certainly something I didn't think about.
Elizabeth, you're recognized.
And on that, I'm glad you asked that question. It is going out with every mailer for if your license is up for renewal. And I believe Logan and Autumn are behind me and correct me. I believe it also goes out with car title registration, the notice for real ID. So we are trying to put that message out there. And to your point, Representative, as much as we can. So
Thank you very much. We've exhausted our list, but just let me summarize that this is a federal program. It's not a state program, but the state is mandated to carry out the program. And that's why we're doing it and why we're having this hearing today. And there may be some, I know several people who have passports, and there is a companion passport card, which you can keep in your wallet, same size as your driver's license. You can use the passport card to fly. I know several people that do that now. So there are options, and I like options, as most people do. But thank you for the information. Obviously, it's something the committee is very interested in today. Good to see you all, and thanks so much for being here.
thank you.
Members, we do have one more presentation. It will be fairly short, but we'll ask the folks from our airports if they would come forward and take their seat at the table. I believe I saw Megan come in with some folks, and I see Megan over there. I see Mr. Kruling from BNA. Good to have you with us, Doug. And we appreciate you being here. It's always good to hear what our airports are doing and what an important service that you provide for the people of Tennessee. And when you're situated, Doug, we'll just start with you. I'll just recognize you, and we'll let each one, you can introduce them or they can introduce themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. We'll start on the far left and work our way from the left to the right on introductions.
Chairman and members, Terry Blue, Memphis International Airport.
Gene Cassie, I'm with the Tri-City Airport in Northeast Tennessee.
Airport. Patrick Wilson with the Metropolitan Knoxville Airport Authority.
And I'm April Cameron with the Chattanooga Metropolitan Airport.
Great. We're anxious to hear from you today. Turn that one.
Thank you very much. We do have some slides. I know you're pressed for time, so we'll run through those slides. The 5 commercial airports are very proud to have the opportunity to speak to you, and primarily just to thank you for the support that the state of Tennessee has been providing to the 5 of us. It's hard to see on the slide right there on the far left, but we developed a 5-year plan that we present to state officials, the transportation, House Transportation, Senate Transportation committees on what each airport is doing with the funds over the next 5 years. We have been working on this from very limited state support to the total this year looks like to be around $109 million, which you see on the far right side of that slide there. So we've been slowly increasing up that participation. And when we get to the latter slide, it'll show you what that return on investment is. It's a little hard to see in the center of this slide, so I'll keep moving forward. You've already met the 5 CEOs of the commercial service airports in Tennessee. And what we're really proud of is the opportunity for all the people from Tennessee to travel for business or leisure pleasure coming in and out of each of our airports. These are pictures of where the investments will be dedicated at each of the airports for FY26, and we'll open that for questions here at the very end. And this is probably the biggest slide. All of the leaders in the state executive branch, but also in the House and Senate, always ask us, well, what's the benefit? Why does Tennessee invest in its commercial service airports? The 5 commercial airports that are sitting here this year will generate a little over $24 billion in economic impact to the state of Tennessee. We will generate about $868 million in state taxes from the businesses that operate on our 5 commercial airports. And if eventually our goal is to get to 125 million. If you divide 125 million into that 868 that is collected in taxes, it's a great return of almost 700% that the state is making off of each of the airports. So a little bit of investment in commercial airports is showing a great return for the state of Tennessee. And we have beautiful pictures that we fly as we try to keep up with the construction at each of our airports. But more importantly, based on our time, that's our names and contact information and email addresses. But we would love to answer any questions that committee members have about any of the 5 commercial airports.
All right. Very concise. Thank you for that. I believe we are starting a list, and it begins with Representative Towns.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you all for being here and making the presentation. Last year, you all made the presentation. It's always very good, very informative. I do want to recognize another Memphis executive, Michael Fulton, with Mike, raise your hand. He's at Memphis Airport as well, does a fantastic job for us down there. If you don't mind, I'd love to know each of you all's traffic to date and what percentage of increase has it been over the last couple of years?
You want to start?
All the way down.
Got it.
Try to speak loudly.
There you go.
Representative Towns, again, good morning. Terry Blue, Memphis Airport. Memphis has set another high water mark. Our year over year from 23 to 24 grew by 2%.
Okay.
And that is 5 million total passengers.
Okay.
Yeah, the Tri-City Airport, where we've also seen some record growth over the last couple of years. In 24, we were about 10-12% up, and we're doing just under 500,000 total passengers.
Very good. Thank you.
I'm Doug Krulin with the Nashville International Airport. For previous, and I'm giving you a 12-year window. The 10 years leading up to the last 2, we grew at an average of 10%. Previous year was 8%. This year at 7%. We are at 25.2 million passengers at the end of this year.
Wow.
Patrick Wilson from Knoxville. We've seen all market segments in the Knoxville, East Tennessee region grow. Tourism, governmental travel, corporate travel, residential travel. We topped 3.3 million passengers this year, and that's based on a 2023 growth of 14%. 2024 growth of 18%, and starting 2025 January, we're up 20%. So historic growth. If you take the 2 COVID years of 20 and 21 out, we've had 7 consecutive years of record growth. So we've just totally outgrown our facilities, and this money and the funding that the state's been able to help us with is a piece that really lets us leverage other debt and really move our development program forward. So thank you for that.
April Cameron from Chattanooga Airport. We also experienced record growth in 2024. We had employment counts of 556,000. That was up 14% over the previous year. So total passenger count for last year exceeded 1.1 million. In January, we are actually up 20% over January of last year. So we continue to see growth in the Chattanooga market.
Very good. Any follow-up on that? Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mine's for Mr. Wilson. Do you have any internships? I got a constituent that's looking to do an intern thing at McGee-Tyson.
We'll get
So we do several a year. We kind of move those around to various departments of marketing, operations, and so if be glad to put him in contact with our HR department. I actually started as an intern at McGee-Tyson Airport in 1993, so I put a lot of value in internships and continued my career and was able to eventually come back as president. So looking for the next me, absolutely.
Follow up?
Great. I'll give you one of my cards. Maybe we can exchange information. So thank you.
The representative is a pilot. Chairman Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And days gone by, Mr. Wilson was my guy in Tri-Cities, and now Mr. Causey is my guy in Tri-Cities, and I thank you all very much. As we're coming here as a collective, is there an ask collectively that you're bringing before the General Assembly? And also, if there is an individual for each airport, I'll give you an opportunity to address what an individual airport may need at this moment. So I'll give you a few moments to do that. But first, is there a universal ask that we're looking for first?
You're recognized.
I think the universal ask from the 5 commercial airports that make up the Tennessee Association of Air Carrier Airports is just for the state to continue to support the commercial airports like they have. We provide a long-range plan to the state of Tennessee that shows what we're planning to do and need to do over the next 5 years. And the commitment that the state provides to us over these investments, we take that data and then we put it into 10-year performance. And then that's what we take to New York when we're going to bond markets. So you're basically helping us to open up our own cash flows with state cash flows to go out and bond more money so that we can build here in the local area. So big picture wise, that's what we're doing. We're leveraging the money that we receive from the state of Tennessee. In my example, we're $40 million is doing a $360 million project. And then I'll borrow the rest of that money to pay the bills from there.
Follow up?
And if I could, just as we move forward, any individual airport that would be coming to the assembly for anything, and I'll open up to anybody who'd like to throw their hands up and speak.
I'll just say thank you for your support. You've been very supportive in the 6 years I've been at the Tri-City Airport. I appreciate every minute of it. For our airport, we're in a different, obviously, realm than Nashville is or than Memphis is. We have a different scale of operations, and sometimes it becomes much more challenging for us. So this funding that we've been seeing over the last few years has been able to open up a lot of opportunities, which I know we've had some opportunity to show you a couple of them during meetings we've held at the airport. And we just look forward to continuing to be able to have those opportunities and to give us the ability to grow. As you know, there's a ton of potential over there in our area of the state, and we're unable to capitalize on a lot of that because we don't have the capital to be able to do that. And this gives us a great opportunity. So while there's no specific ask for Tri-Cities beyond this particular moment, we do ask the continued support and openness to be able to listen to us when we have those ideas, because being able to do these things and maybe thinking a little bit outside of the way it's always been done helps us tremendously. So thank you very much for that.
Follow?
And thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Causey. You certainly have my support. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Representative Glenn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Hall kind of took my question, so I'm not going to rehash that one. But I do want to ask this one. I think obviously there's been a rash of incidents in terms of flights. Do you think that will have an impact? Just recently, one last night in Canada. Do you think that will have an impact on the growth? I mean, you all mentioned growth over the years. Do you think that will have an impact on what we'll be seeing coming up in the next year? And only one of you probably can answer that.
Yeah, I'll take a shot at that. I think when you look at the history of aviation, the accidents and incidents are part of aviation. It's a complex travel system, but it's also continues to be safer and safer every year. The fact that we've not had a commercial incident from now all the way back to 2009 is a significant record for our country. And so we do not expect, based on a long 30 or 40-year history of passenger growth in our nation, we see that continuing. I think people will have questions. There'll be information that comes out from those incidents, but I have the greatest confidence in the safety of our airport system and our air traffic system, and that will continue to see the growth over the long term that we're trying to be ready for.
Follow up? Representative Vital. Oh, I asked follow up. I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
I think the chairman there was trying to answer, and that's why I was holding on.
Okay. Go ahead. You're recognized. There you go. We're working a new mic system here.
Okay. First, compliments on those jump wings there. I flew with a C-130 for 20 some years. I don't know why anybody wanted to jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
I've asked that question for years.
But I would add that all 5 of the commercial service airports here are certificated by what's called Part 139 from the FAA. So 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, we have crews on duty to ensure that runways, taxiways are operated in a safe manner, to include our ramps. We all have firefighting capability that have to be to any place on the airport within 3 minutes to respond around the clock. So, as Patrick said, aviation has been very, very safe, and we train daily to make sure that we're ready for the worst case situation. Thank you.
Another follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Will you all have any kind of, PR to kind of just reassure folks that air travel is still safe, one of the safest modes of travel out there? Will there be any PR coming out of that?
And I think that you'll see and just to piggyback on the previous presentation you had on Real ID, I was asking each of our airport CEOs there, we're already promoting Real ID on all of our social media platforms so that passengers know the May 7th deadline is rapidly approaching. But we do regularly promote the safety of flight. We promote the enhanced security that we have at airports, and then we try to highlight what our operations and maintenance teams do to prepare the airfields for day in and day out activity. We're all going to be challenged with the snow that's coming in, but again, we have a high standard of safety to be able to support that.
Representative Vital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for your presentation. As a user of airports in all cities in Tennessee, I greatly appreciate the investment that all of you have put in. And obviously, we all talk about the beauty and the spectacular airport we have in Nashville, but I do want to compliment Chattanooga, my hometown. Our airport has grown spectacularly the last couple of years. The parking facilities are phenomenal. But the question I hear from a lot of people that travel is the price of parking. It used to be concessions were so high, the food service was high. I think that's moderated a little bit. And I know predictable revenue sources, parking is one of those. When you go to Wall Street, it's great to be able to tell them that 50% of your revenue comes from parking. But what can we do on parking, and what impact do you see with Uber and other services where people will now take that to the airport rather than parking? And I'll turn it over to all of you just to kind of comment on that.
You're on. Go ahead.
So as you mentioned, parking is a tremendous source of revenue for any airport. So it is very important for us. And I know here in Chattanooga, it's important for us to make sure that we have a very comparable parking rate. And so we do. We try to compare ourselves to other airports because we want to make sure that we are offering up not only a convenient experience, but also an affordable experience as well. And I feel like we have been successful at doing that. So we will continue to keep our eyes on that and make sure that we don't get in a position where we're not providing that convenient, affordable flying experience.
Follow up?
There it goes. At Nashville, it's parking is a third of our revenue. So we make a third of our revenue from the airline fees, land, park the jet and rent space. The other third is concessions, hot dogs, hamburgers, and sodas. And then parking is a third of our revenue. We benchmark ourselves off of other airports, as April was saying, but we also benchmark ourselves off of Nashville, downtown Nashville parking rates as well. So we have three offerings, $20, $30, or $40. And if you park in a hotel downtown, you're going to spend $54 a day. So, or for a few hours. Where we're parking today, I'm going to pay $48 for parking to come down here today.
Follow up?
And I would just say, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The convenience of being closer to the terminal is advantageous for sure, which probably carries the $40 fee. I think I've paid more than that, but that's okay because I made that decision. But you're gone 3, 4, 5 days, and next thing you know, you got 200 plus in parking, and that is difficult on families. But hey, we want to keep you profitable, and we want to keep you in business and keep borrowing that money at cheap rates if you can find it. Thank you.
Well, and just to add on the profitability, there's anytime we receive any government or federal dollars, we have to sign what's called a grant agreement. There's 39 of them. And one of them requires us to be as self-sustaining as possible, which basically means we don't have profit at our airports. Another one of the grant assurances requires us to reinvest anything we make at the airport, so profits back into construction programs. So we're charging enough to make sure we can pay the cost and plus the cost of whatever we're building at that given time. So you by assisting us, you're helping us defer future increases in parking to some degree, just because as costs rise, you have to keep up.
Follow up?
And I just want to clarify that I wasn't opposed to profit. We need to make sure there's a margin, an acceptable margin, so you can have long-term maintenance. So I agree with you totally. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, each and every one of you, for being here today. I was going to elaborate just a little bit on what Representative Glenn had talked about, the safety of what we're seeing going on TV, telling a lot of stuff. So, but I believe that flying is very safety, and I enjoy flying, and I appreciate it for one of you and what you do to make us safe when we fly. And sometimes we have some unruly people that gets on planes, and sometimes you have to do things. But anyway, appreciate you. I'm interested in wanting to come and see more what's going on in our airport right out here, plus the big intersection out there. When's that going to be done?
Well, I understand many of the committee members are coming out on Monday for a possible tour, so we'd love to be able to. And which section is the beginner section?
The one right there.
Oh, the intersection.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're waiting on TDOT to finish that. It should open up in May.
Yeah.
And that'll allow us to demo the rest of Donaldson Pike to make a bigger loop road. The new roads are designed to go from 25 million passengers today to 40 million. So as soon as TDOT opens that intersection, we're able to go in there and take down the old Donaldson Pike.
Thank y'all very much.
Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I have to ditto some of the comments. Now, I understand when we come on a Monday that there are going to be a few of the members are going to be able to fly a couple of planes as part of the training. I just want to know who those members are and what plane not to get on.
I believe that's at Knoxville.
Okay. Okay. Well, make sure it stays at Knoxville. Don't let it be this Monday. Okay. Now, in line with safety, obviously the airports do a fantastic job as it relates to safety in this country. Truck drivers as well. They do a fantastic job. If not, the people would be terrified. However, when something happened back to back, our antennas get raised, become a little bit more cautious. We're not looking at the overall numbers at that point in time. We're just looking at what we see there in our own personal mortality. Okay. Yeah, but here again, airports do a fantastic job, a great job. My question to you all is that in Tennessee, not across the country, but specifically in Tennessee, what about our equipment? Is our equipment, I never hear you all talking about our equipment that we use to navigate the planes, all our technical stuff. How are we holding up? Are we current? Are we dated or what? The equipment. that we use to, control all this traffic in the air.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Mr. Chairman, Representative Towns, excellent question. And as you recognized, and as was said, aviation is the safest form of transportation, period, far and away, certainly safer than getting on the roads. And one component of making sure that it is safe is the investment in the air navigation system and a lot of the equipment that might be on the ground, instrument landing systems, just the overall facilities and equipment. A lot of that is federally supported. The FAA would be a part of putting that equipment in place. There are programs where airports may choose to install and then donate to the FAA. But we do work very closely with our partners, the federal government, to ensure that that equipment is available and operational. And then airports also have a number of other systems to try and keep our ramp areas and so forth safe as well. So the investment is absolutely there.
Well, the question is more specifically, is our equipment aged, current, or middle of the run? I mean, where are we with what's the average age of our equipment?
Representative Towns, I'm not sure if I'm qualified to say exactly where a lot of the federal equipment is.
Right.
I think you're going to see some systems as the FAA has transitioned towards satellite-based are going to be state-of-the-art. Some other systems has been tried and true and been in place for quite some time and is quite reliable as well. But as for the actual age of each particular system, I don't have that information in front of me.
Right. Mr. Chairman.
Got it.
There you go.
There it goes. I would just follow up what Terry was saying about Memphis. I would say if it's airport owned, we're state of the art. The investments that we make on new equipment and our capital budgets, we have to stay up to stay up with the latest technology, but also to gain the additional efficiencies. We've bought in a lot of new snow equipment to remove snow from the runways, where it used to take us an hour and a half to clean a runway. It only takes 20 minutes for us to do now. So you invest that money. On the FAA side of the house, just using Nashville as an example, our air traffic control tower at Nashville International is 30 years old, so it's reaching the end of its useful life.
Okay.
But we are working with the FAA to cite where the next one will go, and then they're planning to build a new one over the next few years at Nashville International. So the FAA recognizes at all of our airports the need to reinvest. We're probably doing it faster because Tennessee's growing so fast. But I think the FAA is following right behind us with upgrades.
Okay.
There you go. And I would just add for your confidence level that when it comes to the Federal Aviation Administration equipment, they test that and keep it within specifications on not even a daily basis, on an hourly basis, whether it's their instrument control systems or their systems in the tower, and whether it's a 30-year-old piece of equipment or a brand new state-of-the-art piece of equipment, they routinely test that every single day. They have maintenance people in the field that are highly qualified, highly trained maintenance folks that ensure that that equipment is operating within the very tight, narrow specifications they have. And if it's not, it's taken out of service and not utilized. So that at worst case scenario in those situations, you're having delays because they've taken a system out of place. But they are making sure those are always maintained. And then behind the scenes, we're always doing things. For instance, at Tri-Cities Airport right now, we're working on a project that we're well ahead of the need for it, but we recognize the need. We're working on a project to go around and mitigate obstructions, trees, such things around the airport. So that safety is constantly being able to look at multiple ways. And when things aren't the way they're supposed to be, they're immediately taken out of service to make sure you're safe.
Okay. Well, finally for you all, if you don't mind, with the advent of different regulations coming down now, what kind of impact do you perceive may happen to your air traffic controllers and personnel that you need? That's something we need to really consider, because in the field of aviation, we consider there's a lot of shortages right now, guys retiring and so forth. How do we look at, how are we looking and preparing for that potential crisis, if so?
So I think the FAA has been looking at their projections for their controller staffing retirements for a number of years. They've expanded kind of the roads into the air traffic system, whether it be through the FAA or college programs that feed the FAA. I think there is a shortage of controllers, but I think the controllers we have work very hard to make sure that they overcome that and keep the system safe. But like probably almost any industry we can point to, we have to look ahead and see what the workforce is going to be and how that supply is going to be there to meet that demand. And air traffic is no different. They're focusing on that. They're looking for more ways to feed the system with new future controllers. So I think it's something that has to stay a focus, but I think there is good progress in that direction.
So have we been able to produce more, put more in the pipeline where we can get them out?
The FAA is looking at different routes of how controllers get in. So again, more college programs, other ways to feed into the FAA Academy that's in Oklahoma City that ultimately produces those controllers, tries to get them the training they need and into the towers where their training continues for a period of time, even after they go through the Academy program. So I think the FAA is looking for ways to modernize and meet the future workforce needs.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We are out of time for this room, members, and we do appreciate our guests coming. Always look forward to hearing from you every year to see what exciting things are happening at our airports, which are a very important part of the economic growth of this state. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming, being with us today. The chair will recognize a motion. We are adjourned. Yes, the airport tour for BNA is Monday.